Hello YouTube and welcome back one and all to the zone where today, ladies and gentlemen, considering it's been roughly a week since Father's Day has come and gone, and what Chris decided to do for Father's Day is to literally post a picture of himself with with him doing the most hideous frown you could imagine at My Little Pony Go Pony, and completely almost ignoring the point because it's strange as well because he made a friggin' a really nice thing about his dad last year, and I would have thought that he would have probably have done something similar, but no, it just seems as if like that's more or less the end of it. So what we're going to do today, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are going to be doing the article of Bob Chandler, aka some of the most important people of Chris's life. So let's get started. It's been actually a little bit of a while since I've last done one of these, so I have to literally see if there's been any updates to anything. It was an interesting life I had, Bob at peace. And Chris responds with, well, he doesn't respond, but this is, again, things out of context. I had more freedom when he was alive. Not too sure quite what I think about that. Robert Franklin Chandler JR was born the 4th of September 1927 and lived until the 6th of September 2011. He lived to be 84 years of age, as far as I can remember. Was the father of Christian Weston Chandler, Carol Chandler, and David Allen Chandler. The stepfather of Cole Smithy and husband of Barbara Weston Chandler, aka Snorlax. Bob became a firm favourite with trolls due to Chris's antipathy, and that's not empathy, it's antipathy towards him for his infamous cameo when he walked in on Chris mass debating. His nickname, the Internet Lumberjack, came from this incident. No pun intended. Despite being estranged from his other children and despised by his stepson, Bob was widely viewed as a better parent than his wife Barbara. Oh, that's true, and trust me, we'll see that when we actually get to Snorlax, because I'm doing an article about her as well in a few minutes' time. Well, probably after this one. This was due to Bob being somewhat concerned with Chris's idiotic behaviour. Well, somewhat is... I don't know, because again, I don't want to say what technically goes on behind closed doors, but I'm going to assume it would have been a lot more concerning if I was Chris's parent. And the fact that he occasionally tried to encourage a modicum of responsibility in Chris's pathetic life, bringing up the fact that he devoted 29 years to raising the selfish man-child. Of course, Chris was almost entirely unaffected by Bob's efforts to better him, but unlike Bob, he at least made the effort. Bob was always very eager to chat, and indeed much of the known information about Bob's life comes from conversations he had with trolls. Whether in person or over the phone, Bob appeared to relish the opportunity to speak with just about anyone. I think that says more about his marriage than anything else. Bob died of heart complication failure on the 6th of September 2011 at Martha Jefferson Hospital ICU, the intensive care unit, surrounded by his family, his pastor, and hospital staff. Wasn't it something like on the very same day, Chris made like a post on Facebook about wanting to seek a boyfriend-free girl? And all that while, his father had moments left to live. Biography. Bob was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and raised in Sylacuglia, Alabama. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. He was the only child of Robert Franklin Chandler Sr., 1906 to the 27th of December 1977, an Alabamian insurance agent, and Jean Holloman, 1906 to the 10th. She did not... How old was that? Like 39 years old? A Texan housewife. Bob mentioned having a cousin and several Cherokee relatives in Oklahoma. However, a distant relative disputed his Cherokee heritage, and his son's DNA test results in 2018 belied any American Indian descent. It is common for white Southerners to make dubious claims to Cherokee ancestry for a variety of historical reasons. Bob has said that he was interested in the world around him since he was 10 and began collecting foreign stamps as a child in the 1930s. His first stamp was of Michael I of Romania. He also developed an interest in foreign music, eventually collecting over some 15,000 to 20,000 LPs from various genres and cultures. It is not clear how this collection fared in the fire, but it was apparently not a total loss, as Chris offered to sell some of the albums to Catherine's cousin AI in late 2014. Service and education. A 1942 yearbook from Siglicuglia High School lists as Bobby Chandler. Lists a Bobby Chandler in the freshman class and glee club, suggesting that he graduated from this school in spring 1945, before matriculating at Auburn University as an aeronautical engineer majoring that autumn. Bob apparently had knowledge that the Army desired, was conscripted as a special draftee in 1946 and placed in the Signal Corps. There he learned how to install value systems, switchboards, and telephones. You know, that's actually... What's quite interesting about that is that my granddad Dominic also had a part in serving in the army, because he was an engineer by trade. He was more of a car mechanic, but he was his skills. I think he built a whole range of British Land Rovers for the British Army back in his day, and I think most of those were supposed to be If it wasn't just for the end of of World War II, it must have been for, I'd say, parts to send out to border like West Germany or somewhere like that. After basic training and signal school, Bob was sent to Korea for a year to install infrastructure with the American Occupational Force, serving until 1948. He was entitled to the World War II Victory Medal. His service number was 44107856. Figuring he'd get swallowed up at a big college, Bob picked a small college, Jacksonville State Teachers College. After leaving the military, he studied pre-engineering and joined the band there for 2 years before returning to Auburn University, where he studied electrical engineering and graduated in 1952. As an engineer, he never learned to spell properly. Well, to be fair, there are some brilliant minds in this world who have all sorts of difficulties. While he was at Auburn, he was a member of Phi Mu Alpha, a social frat dedicated to men who are interested in music. Oh, that's actually quite nice. I mean, come on, again, let's face it, Auburn University, you know what? All credit for him for going there. I mean, it's not MIT, but it can't be denied. I mean, he served in, he went to Korea, he did stuff for the war, he got a victory medal. How many of you guys could say you've ever got a victory medal? Korea. Bob worked for Western Electric as an engineer for 40 years. There, he designed a variety of electrical subsystems. He eventually went to work for General Electric in upstate New York. Since New York, maybe Bob was the one who came up with the idea for steamed hams. Just a thought. For General Electric in upstate New York. Since New York is too cold and Yankee for Bob, he moved away after 3 years, working in North Carolina for some time. He worked with both Goodrich and Goodyear. With General Electric, Bob was responsible for at least 7 patents. Bob acclaimed in an email to Miyamoto that without Bob's influence in the computer world, the NES might not have arrived so soon, ignoring the fact that the NES was designed and released in Japan in 1983, without the influence of American electronics. Way to go, Bob. The general manager at General Electric. Bob Chandler is one of the most creative engineers in the organization. That's actually, just before we go there, I just saw something that catched my eye. Article on Bob's 25th anniversary at General Electric. Let's take a look at this very quickly. I'm going to assume Bob is in the middle. I think we can just about read this. It seemed like a reunion in the general manager's office last Wednesday when Bob Chandler received his 25-year service award. Each participant had been in Salem way back when, and each "do you remember the story?" reminded someone of another memorable incident, and they were off again. Those attending the reunion were Bob Chandler, his manager in PC product engineering, Dom Thomas, NC engineering manager, Bruce Doyle, Quarter Century Club president, Phil Waldron, and ICD general manager Guido Di Gregorio. In November 1956, Robert Franklin Bob Chandler began his engineering career with General Electric on the Atlas missile program for the Military Electronics Department in Utica, New York State. In 1959, he transferred to the Industry Control Department in Salem. It was while in Salem that he had his first encounters with Guido, Dom, Bruce, and Phil. Guido recalled a project which Bob engineered that helped to launch his career in marketing. In the late 1960s, Guido was a product planner in the marketing field, and Bob was working with the plastic molding controls. The OEMs who were familiar with relay logic wanted the advantages of solid-state logic in the PM controls. Bob Chandler conceived a different solid-state logic system which looked like relay logic. His system was named Flow-Through and is still being used in the programmable control logic to this day. With Dom's help, Guido, as the product manager for plastic molding, presented this new concept to the OEMs. I swear, never mind. In what he remembers as one of the most outstanding selling jobs of his career. He acknowledged Bob Chandler as one of the major contributors to the plastic molding business. Bob discussed several of projects which represent his product accomplishments. His desired controls for the first automated blast furnace, Old Betsy, for the US Steel 20 years later. This moment to his ingenuity is still in operation. The most challenging task he has performed, according to Bob, was to develop an automatic railroad car counter. Sounds simple. Try it. But remember, all train cars are not the same size, nor do they have the same number of axles. Now try it. Bob pondered train cars for months before finding the solution and successfully designing the counter. In 1975, Bob and the Plastic Molding Control Engineering Unit moved to Richmond. He stayed there until this year when they were moved out to Charlottesville into the programmable control subsection. Bob was received 5 patents and has about 10 more disclosures pending. As I listened to the reminiscing about Bob's engineering career, I was amazed that this was only his 25th year of service. As the general manager put it, Bob Chandler is one of the most creative engineers in the organization. Congratulations, Bob. He is wishing you good health and many more service anniversaries. You know, if I was going to end the video right there, I think I would have found the perfect way to have ended that, but this technically is in the end because we've got a lot to go through. But that was actually really sweet of them to do that. Examples of Bob's accomplishments included an automated steel mill for rolling steel for cars, a paper mill for the production of Kleenex, warehousing, railroads, and tanker ships. He designed scooters, die casting machines, machines for producing plastic products, and a vehicle logging system. Both Chris and Barbara have bragged that Bob designed controls that were used in plastic water-containing holding machines. When exactly Bob did retire is not known. During the 1980s, the standard age of retirement for men in America was 65, with many choosing to retire even sooner. Bob was born in 1927, meaning that he was most likely retired by the late 80s or early 90s. The Richmond Times-Dispatch article about Chris's name change clearly says that Bob was retired at the time of the article, 29th of December 1993. Bob himself was proud of his natural inclination for logic, although this was inundated by all of his designs and whether he did well for the world. Would plastic water bottles lead to mankind's salvation or utter destruction? Only time would tell. World consciousness. I have been very interested in the world since I was 10 years old, and that was 70 years ago. And I'm very fond of how I really truly believe in the United Nations, but you won't find it anywhere else in this countryside or around here. I think that does. But anyway, I'm very world conscious, Bob. Politically, Bob was identified as a Republican and did not vote for Barack Obama in the 2008 presidential election. Well, again, I'm not really going to hold that against him because, to be honest, the late John McCain, wasn't it? I heard the stories that he was like kidnapped when he was on service in Vietnam, and because he passed away a couple of years ago. And with that being said, in the time leading to the Virginia gubernatorial election of 2009, Bob had misgivings about Bob McDonnell, the Republican candidate and eventual winner of the election. Bob and Chris considered the option of writing in Snoopy rather than voting for any of the candidates listed on the ballot. Okay. In a potentially damaging moment on the 18th of February 2009, Bob doubted the existence of Mulvania, Julia's country of origin. However, he continued talking under the assumption that Mulvania was under Russian control. However, he rather damningly failed to question why Julie spoke perfect English with an American accent, or why it was clearly a male voice. Relationships. Previous family. Bob was previously married to a woman named Patricia Harley on the 25th of September 1956. They had 2 children, Dr. David Allen Chandler and Carol Suzanne Chandler. David is a optician, and I believe Carol Suzanne works for the federal government. They might go into that in a second. Bob and Patricia separated on the 28th of June 1976 before divorcing on the 28th of January 1980. So nearly over 40 years since that happened. Bob's relationships with David and Carol were strained in his later years. Chris did not know he had a niece via David named Savannah until she was 8 years old, and Bob's relationship with Carol was even more strained. According to Chris, Bob was always concerned about Carol. None of the Chandlers knew what was going on with her, and last they heard she was working for the government, implying that she did not show up to her father's funeral. Barbara. Bob and Barbara met in a bar on karaoke night. Barbara was there with friends and Bob was singing. According to Chris, Barbara did the pursuing. She chased that couldn't have led to anything bad. She chased him down the hall. This is probably why he figures he could get away with being passive in terms of courtship. In contrast, Cole's friend Chuck, who works at the bar, has a vivid memory of them being drunk retards. I don't know. Getting drunk can lead you to do some incredibly stupid things. I can account for that. They got married in 1980, only months after Bob and Patricia had divorced. According to Chris, Barbara did not have sex with Bob for at least 2 decades before his passing. They had been sleeping in separate rooms for the past few years. You see, that's what I'm talking about. I don't know whether it was just because of Barbara's nihilistic personality, or whether or not Bob I don't know what was going through. Cole. Bob married Barbara when her son Cole Smithy, was 17. Around the time Cole left to lead his own life in California. Cole feels that Bob's bitterness worked to separate his relationship with his mother. Cole said he would celebrate when that fuck Bob finally drops, but it is unknown if he did so. Cole said that he and Bob shared a mutual hatred, though there isn't any proof that Bob hated Cole. In the least, it is certain that Bob knew Cole didn't like him. Chris. Oh boy. Bob Chandler, Internet Lumberjack. Get away from that internet. I'm cutting it down right now. When Chris was a boy, Bob encouraged him to learn more about the world and tried sharing his interests and hobbies, including engineering, geography, and stamp collecting. When Chris was 7, Bob converted a shed in the backyard of 14 Branch Lane Court to a workshop, where he and Chris could build things together, dubbing it the Dreaming Studio. Chris could not recall what they had built together when asked about it in the years following Bob's death. He and Bob had been using the space for hoard storage, and you can see right here, Dreaming Studio of Mr. C and Little C, where dreams do come true. 1989. that just... That gives you an idea that... I'll get to that later. Bob wished that Chris was more interested in the world. He tried to teach Chris about foreign geography such as Europe and Australia, but he thought correctly that Chris doesn't understand countries and continents beyond what he's seen on television, and only can associate with the places he's physically been to in Virginia. Bob enjoyed collecting stamps as a boy growing up in the 1930s, and he continued to do so for several decades, with a focus on the United Nations and foreign countries, owning a collection of stamp albums which filled 6 boxes. He told Chris about his hobby, buying him a beginner's stamp album in 1992. Chris seemed to enjoy the hobby as well, since he had many pages of stamps filled in. In 2017, Chris began selling pieces of Bob's stamp collection to pay bills, as opposed to getting a job and paying his own bills, but whatever. True to form, he priced Bob's valuable pieces at decent prices, generally for $5 per set, but tried to sell his own personal stamp collection for $1,000. It was later revealed in Bob's written letters to Chris that he wanted Chris to learn about the treasure and heirlooms he left him, a request that fell on deaf ears. Or mute ears. Bob's racist joke that Barack Obama would paint the White House black as soon as he became president influenced Chris to draw it in Sonetry number 8. I wish he was joking, but no, that is a thing that actually happened. Chris's phobia of penises was apparently sparked from barging into his parents' room, where Bob had a habit of sleeping nude from the waist down. Chris had often complained about stressful confrontations with his father. Well, my father is a major stressor against me, starts arguments, annoys me, rarely washes his hands after restroom breaks. Lord knows I've tried to encourage him to wash numerous times and rarely succeeded. Chris, IRC chat, 31st of December 2008. Splendid. However, the many instances of Bob communicating with trolls shows that he was genuinely pleasant and amicable, not at all inclined to start arguments, as Chris asserts. As seen during the lead up to the fateful encounter between Emily, Chris and the man in the pickle suit, Bob seemed to be more happy to discuss stories with people, even those he hasn't seen or heard of much of. Robert Simmons V, who met Bob during his visit to Chris's church, conversed with him extensively, later saying he was a really pleasant guy. The antagonism to which Chris refers is likelier to be Bob attempting to constructively criticize Chris in order to better him, as Chris deeply resents being told what he does not want to hear. Isn't that just so? An example of this criticism was Bob telling Chris that since Bob had looked after Chris for 29 years, despite his childish and outrageous behavior, Chris should show more gratitude towards him. Chris was completely dismissive, figuring that his father was obligated to take care of him, and seeing no reason he should demonstrate any foreign concepts such as love, support, gratitude, and willingness to help, reinforcing Bob's point. Chris would still run for his father's aid when he felt threatened, as in the later parts of the Casey and Liquid call. Despite Bob's occasional frustration over Chris's actions, he seemed to have bought into the theory that Chris is tormented by a complex network of enemies spanning in the entire world. Due to the success that he has earned from his Sonetry franchise, in the Matthew Noble call, it appears that Bob seemed to be on the origin of Chris's tendency to bring up unrelated mishaps and debacles to make current incidents and sources of stress seem petty in comparison. Once, during a phone call with Chris, Bob stated that Chris had accomplished significant goals in his adult life. Like what? I think I'll just answer my own question there. However, it is unknown if Bob actually believes that, not to mention what accomplishments he was referring to. It was just something he was saying because he didn't want to admit to complete strangers that his son was a total failure in life and a leech on society. bit late for that, but don't worry, Bob. We figured that out a very long time ago. He seemed never to get past the notion that Chris could and had achieved things, given that he continued to have to nursemaid Chris well into his into his son's late 20s. In the later parts of 2009 and throughout 2010, as chronicled in Chris's emails with Vivian G and Jackie, Bob had been forced to take an increasingly active role in controlling Chris's spending and debt, paying off Chris's credit cards with his own money in an attempt to prevent interest charges from spiraling even further out of control. I've never even once had to ask any of my parents to bail me out because, again, there are some people out there who do have autism but are actually responsible people. By the fall of 2010, he was monitoring Chris's bank accounts on a daily basis and keeping him on a strict allowance. Upon finding out about Chris's escapades in early 2011, Bob's reaction was to question Chris's sexuality, at one point even calling him a fag. This is like when Chris suddenly decided that he was a tomgirl for inexplicably no reason. Chris has said specifically that he doesn't have to love his father, but has to respect him. Well, in that sense, in parenting, I'm not entirely sure if I really agree with that. Confidential details collected after Bob's death, however, suggest Chris was more emotionally attached than he let on, proving rare and precious evidence that Chris doesn't take the presence of others for granted. In December 2012, Chris uploaded the soundtrack from the 1990 WTJU Jazz Marathon, in which Bob was a performer and a host. It was notable as one of the few moments where Chris publicly honored his father's memory since the latter's passing in September of 2011. Bob lives on in his son's memory. Chris noted the occasion of his father's passing by attaching angel wings to the Lego minifigure representing him, and displaying 2 photos of him in front of his TV. He often visits Bob in his dreams. Due to the influence of the idea guys, Chris expressed beliefs that Bob is half Sonichu and is apparently still alive in the Quickville dimension. These beliefs began around December 2017 and continued even after the idea guys had been removed from power, as shown by the below quote from 2018 Father's Day. Hashtag Happy Father's Day to each and every father in this world and every single in other dimension. My father is alive again. I still love him, even in his checker-pattered glory. Again, a few months ago when Chris made a live stream about reading some fanfic, apparently his father became a sizzle, So, apparently Bob in the other dimension is half Sonichu, all sizzle, but somehow something else. Chris is not a... Chris, how bad is it when, you know what, death of the author... It's not so much death of the author, because Chris had to be alive on the inside and outside first for the death of the author card to really come into effect. This is not going well. Because I'm usually the sort of person who's kind of anti-death of the author. But unfortunately, again, Chris is like not really giving me much hope in that sense. Latter life, poor health and death. Bob lived on Social Security and his General Electric pension. He never really had people to chat with at home. He would ramble to total strangers on the phone if he could. So he sat around, listened to music, and took care of the garden inside the greenhouse. With a 1970s stereo system set up in the greenhouse, he went to swing with the music on his swing there. Bob had 2 triple bypasses and 4 heart attacks. The 2 triple bypasses operations took place in August 1980. He wore an artificial pacemaker. In one prank call, Bob revealed that after surgery for cancer, it was discovered that he had a fluid buildup in his legs, which is symptomatic of CHF. This rapid decline in health worried him. He attributed his long life to the Cherokee in him. His uncles and grandfather all lived past 90. Wow. Despite his heart troubles, he continued to eat at Burger King daily. Right, okay. Maybe his parents had like membership there or something like that. On the 1st of March 2010, Chris tweeted that Bob had been taken to the hospital in the early morning of congested heart failure. Chris seemed confident that his father was not in for a long stay. Considering Bob's age, lifestyle, and long history of heart disease, Chris did not seem to grasp the seriousness of his heart failure. I mean, I don't understand why Chris couldn't. It's called heart failure. It's called not heart is doing well, no need to worry, heart failure. Bob had been the only thing keeping the Chandler household from imploding, and as such, trolls and white knights alike wished him the very best. In the month following Bob's hospitalization, Chris was remarkably quiet on the subject of his father. News about his condition was hard to come by, as information only arose when Chris was inclined to complain about it online. Statistically, congestive heart failure is not as immediately fatal as its name implies, but Bob's age, prior heart attacks, and lifestyle made this a very serious situation. Chris's videos over the month of March made no mention of Bob at all. Staying true to his painfully predictable nature, Chris instead lost a girlfriend he never had, made racial slurs and death threats towards a cartoon character, and raged against abstinence. His silence on the subject of his father was probably because of the genuine ignorance of the seriousness of his father's condition. A poster on Quick contacted Chris via PlayStation Network regarding Bob. He posted a screen capture of Chris's response saying, "He is doing much better, thank you." Another contacted Chris via email and got a response saying, "Yes, my father is healthy and safe." Clearly he was neither, but this was at least proof that Bob hadn't joined the whites-only section of heaven just yet. In late May, Chris finally made a brief mention in a public video that he was alive and well. Chris was at least half right. A breakdown of Bob's final months reads as follows. March 24th, Bob claimed in a phone call to have cancer of some description. On the 23rd of April 2011, in an email to Jackie, Chris revealed that Bob had received surgery from colon cancer. On the 20th of July 2011, it was revealed that Bob knew about Chris's cross-dressing tendencies and, like Bob, vehemently disapproved of them. On the 29th of August 2011, Chris, now deeply entrenched in his tomgirlish ways, mentioned that Bob was an ill and sickly shut-in and was suffering from feet bloatings. In early September 2011, Bob was rushed by ambulance to Martha Jefferson Hospital with heart failure. It was discovered later that Bob had been put into quarantine when he arrived because of his body was covered in bug bites, and he posed a contamination risk. On the 6th of that March, he died at the age of 84. Out of respect for him and his family, the Quick was closed for a week, the 12th to the 19th of September, with the start date coinciding with the day Bob's funeral service was held. Site visitors were directed to a page which simply read, Robert Franklin Chandler Jr., 1927 to 2011. Cause of death. Despite the fairly clear-cut nature of the lumberjack's passing, Chris has since declared that the trolls were responsible for Bob's death because of course they had to be. In an email leaked on the 22nd of March 2014, Chris claims that the stress of his trolling led to Bob's heart attack. This keeps in the trend that Chris has developed of blaming any and all misfortunes, even those faced by everyone, like burying a family member, on trolls. And the total stress killed my father prematurely. If not for those trolls, he would still be alive and would still have likely lived beyond 2015. Chris. Even for Chris, this is appalling behavior. No, appalling is too small a word for this. Using the death of his own father as a vehicle to play the victim and attempt to stave off trolls. While it's not uncommon for those who have lost loved ones to blame their deaths on external causes, however impossible or insane, as is the case, Chris's actions are motivated purely out of selfishness and egotism. Business as usual. Years later, in 2017, Chris revised his claim and said that Bob was killed after hospital staff surprised him with a loud noise. He went on to say he had more freedom when Bob was alive. I wish I could go back to September 5th, 2011 and stop the staff from making the loud noise that killed my father with stressful surprise. I had more freedom when he was alive. So he's blaming the people who were trying to look after him. And where was Chris at this point? Friggin' making posts on Facebook. Ride me sideways. That's appalling. I don't think I could even live with myself if I said anything about that. If that anyone in my family passes away, never. I couldn't even think about ever doing that. That's just. Both Bob and Chris collaborated in writing Bob's obituary, which was published in 2 local papers. Main points of the obituary are, apart from the standard birth date, date of death, and next of kin, include text going into unusual detail about what Bob did at General Electric, the location of the memorial service to follow on a later date at Wesley Memorial United Methodist Church, the church that Bob, and Chris used to frequent together. This is the same church that Rocky Shoemaker cancels Chris from. A footnote asking readers to not donate flowers but to donate money to Barbara and Chris. With Chris taking part in writing the obituary, it's amazing that the writing stayed focused on Bob and did not once mention solitude or became about Chris. That's actually quite humble. Unfortunately, it doesn't really make up for anything else, but it's a step, I suppose. Original text. Robert Franklin Chandler JR, 84, of Ruckersville, passed away the morning of Tuesday, September 6, 2011, at Martha Jefferson Hospital ICU, surrounded by family, pastoral, and hospital staff. He was born on September 4th, 1927 in Texas, the son of the late Robert Franklin Chandler Sr. and Jean Holloman Chandler. On June 7th, 1980, he married Barbara Ann Weston, who survives, and the couple gave birth to a son, Christian Weston Chandler, who survives. Also surviving is ex-wife Patricia and their shared children, son Dr. David Allen Chandler survives, and daughter Carol Suzanne Chandler survives. He graduated from Auburn University with a degree in engineering. He served in the United States Army South Korea in the Signal Corps during the Korean War. He worked for General Electric as an engineer with steels, plastics, etc. He also had patents for the controls for plastic modeling machines. Without him, we would not have even have a simple plastic funnel. Also surviving are our granddaughter Savannah Chandler, the daughter of David Allen Chandler and his wife Kimberly. A funeral service will be held at Monticello Memory Gardens in Charlottesville, Virginia, 10 a.m. Monday, September 12, 2011. A memorial service to follow on a later date at Wesley Memorial United Methodist Church. Instead of flowers, you may make monetary donations to his wife Barbara Chandler and son Christian Chandler. In memoriam. Bob is often seen as a gregarious, hard-working man, all things considered, who tried, albeit without success, his best to refine Chris into someone that could at least pass for a responsible adult, giving him mock job interviews and chirruping him on dates, where he proved, unsurprisingly, more adept at charming the date than Chris. On the other hand, we have to thank him for some of his son's more backward worldviews. He managed to alienate his other children enough that his daughter wouldn't attend his funeral, or keep in touch while he was alive. He helped Chris to construct bizarre conspiracy theories to justify trespassing and the like, among other things. He, like Barbara, enabled Chris's crippling dependence on them, general immaturity and irresponsibility, and his myriad of other flaws. He would bail out his son repeatedly and never let Chris experience the consequences of his misinformed life decisions. He never made any serious effort to correct his son's glaring character flaws and shortcomings, even when he caught him masturbating in the kitchen. He also did not make any real attempt to provide for Chris's future. Beyond insuring the tugboat, he left all his money to Barbara, who promptly wasted it all on lawyer fees. A conscientious parent would have anticipated this and would put the money in a trust fund for Chris. Ultimately, Bob's legacy is a complicated one. While some like to remember Bob as a kind-hearted man who tried his best to improve his son and be a good father, others see him as an old, backward-thinking coot who is partially responsible for the person Chris is today. Some parts of it were, but not all of them. Because Dr. David Allen and Carol Suzanne had enough to basically gain some level of independence. Now, whether you want to say that's a thing about Chris's autism and how it's affected him to literally... Although, again, autism doesn't make people automatically think that they could just depend on the whole world to provide them a living. It doesn't work quite like that. That's an ego problem that Chris has, brought on by the fact that, again, his parents sort of like just enable this behavior instead of severely wanting to apprehend Chris on this. Chris's beliefs on Bob's afterlife. Oh dear. Idea guy influences. Robert Franklin Chandler Jr. and Ted Bundy's souls never went to heaven or hell. They both became reborn as their respective sonotube forms. Mr. C and Ted also served to help the nation of Quickville in defense and in intellect. Good lord. Sonotube 16, page 49. You cannot be serious about that. Because I didn't know anything about Sonotube keep going until after part 13 or something like that. During the Idea Guy saga, Chris's belief in multiple dimensions was exploited and his sense of reality hijacked to make changes to many of Chris's characters, concepts, and perspectives of the real world, with him considering them to be valid. Perhaps one of the more heinous examples of this was the Idea Guy's manipulation of Chris's views on his own father. Views which Chris has not as yet to abandon. Despite the Idea Guys being removed from power by the Guard Dogs in mid-2018, ideas involving Bob include: Bob's spirit resides in Quickville, Dimension C197, as a half-sonotube named Robertu, styled in his sonotube form as a beaver with plaid hair, a reference to his troll-given internet lumberjack nickname. Bob met serial killer Ted Bundy while in Quickville and helps defend it alongside Ted. You cannot... Just wow. Post-Idea Guys, Chris decided that Robertu's fur color was really red with black ears, because he found it hard to draw the plaid coloring. Way to go, Chris. Any effort he will just skim down on. Robertu was featured as cards in Chris's homemade shipfic expansion. In one, Chris photoshopped a photo of Barbara so that she is standing beside a drawing of Robertu in his sonotube form. The card text reads, "Honey, I'm home," and states, "Every once in a while, Mr. C runs back home to offer comfort to Barbara. Why can't he just stay there? Before the dimensional merger's completion, she has missed him every day, and found the solace and comfort when he comes by. He continues to carry a torch for her in his heart and soul." I don't think Chris is remotely telling the truth about any of this, if he had any idea. And this is just a sight, isn't it? Barbara doesn't have, almost looks like she doesn't have a clue what's going on. That's just using his parents again, using his appearances. Christian, you are not a girl, go put your pants back on. In Spring Break 2008, a radio announcement from a Jamster sonotube mentions that Bob founded Quickville in 1982. presumably after Chris's birth on the 24th of February, given that Bob named the city after his newborn son. Comic Bob presumably served as mayor before Chris took the office at an unknown date. At other points, Bob was mentioned in Chris's tangents about hating men other than himself and his father. How brave, how incredibly noble of Chris to say something like that. In Date Ed, there are 2 dolls for the class to practice talking to girls received Robert dolls, while boys received Barbara dolls, an obvious reference homage to Bob and Bob. That's only slightly a bit weird. Bob made his first official appearance in Sonotube number 11, photoshopped into a family photo alongside Chris, Bob, and various electric hedgehog Pokemon. In Sonotube number 12, Bob appears in a set of pages that combine an autobiographical account of Chris's coming out as a tomgirl to his parents, and a tribute to his late father. He is depicted as an elderly man, as the page took place in 2010, due to Chris's Oedipal complex. Bob is depicted as much more youthful. He attempts to dissuade Chris from continuing his tomgirl lifestyle, although Chris states that Bob later told me he accepts and loves me for who I am, shortly before his passing in 2011. Chris concludes Bob's appearance in the book with a photo memorial of his life, saying that he and Bob continue to miss him every day. In August 2017, Chris unveiled a drawing of the Chandler family depicted as My Little Pony, because he fucking would do something like that. Saying that they will make further appearances, blah blah blah, it's just ponies, and he even made a friggin' toy amiibo, stuff like that. And aside from this, I'm just gonna briefly just show you guys the things about the galleries and stuff like that. This isn't Chris's half seen out old grandfather at Christmas time. This is his actual father. Family tree, we kind of sort of done that already. And last known photo of Bob is right there. And apparently somebody even made there's actually quite a lot of tributes, because again, people are still, it's very strange because a lot of people are very, very conflicted when it comes to Bob himself, because many said he wasn't that great of a parent because of the strain he caused for his the children of his previous marriage, as well as, trying to actually raise his own son. But you know what? Who really can say they have the perfect? Who's to say we've not made mistakes? And yes, you can say there are some mistakes about Bob's parenting that are a little bit harder to forgive than others. But then again, you can't blame Bob and you can't blame Barbara, and I will get to Barbara next time. You can't blame them for every single thing that has happened. There are some things that Chris has to take responsibility for. And for one of those things, he could stop blaming trolls for the fact, or hospital staff because of his father's passing. And you know what? The more I think about it, I reckon at the end of the day, and again, I have no real way of actually confirming this, but I reckon all Bob pretty much wanted was for his son to be happy. As do I think most parents in the world. As long as their children are happy, smiling, safe, then is there really much else to worry about? I mean, I mean, again, I'm not a parent, but I've talked to my parents a number of years ago about stuff like that, and they seem to think it's that's the most important thing, because you don't ever stop being a parent. It's a lifelong commitment you've just made. And whether you want to say Bob was the best at it, well, time has sort of shown us that there were some things that he did, but some things that he didn't. But the things about his work at General Electric you can't really deny, because those actually do sound really impressive. It's just, with all it's said and done, well, I think that's about it. All we can say done is rest in peace, Bob Chandler. Eternal rest granted to him, O Lord, and may the paternal light shine upon him. May he rest in peace. It's gonna be 9 years this year since Bob passed, and it's strange as well that Chris claimed to have more freedom. The things he said, I'm not even going to go back on the atrocious things but Chris has said in regards to that, because that's just really, really outstanding, even for Chris. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this reading of Robert Franklin Chandler Jr., Chris's father. Please make sure to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys thought of the reading for yourselves. Please also make sure to also like and subscribe to get daily notifications when my videos come out. And I hope to see all of you guys again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye for now.